All right, so let's call to order the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting. It's August 14th, 2024, 2 p.m.-ish, 2 p.m. Who's doing the roll calls, Megan?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thomas Bradford,
Here.
Brad Fries,
Here.
Russ Redmond, Clay Damon, Jill Wenta,
Here.
Michelle Scharouse,
Here.
Wade Chance.
Here.
All right. So, welcome, Wade,
Thank you.
our newest committee member.
Welcome.
Just briefly tell us anything you want about yourself.
Sure. My name's Wade Chance. I've been in the village for about 4.5 years. Saw an application come across, an announcement that you guys are looking for another committee member, and thought, you know, what the heck, I'd love to serve my community in some form or fashion. I'm not an environmental expert, so, you know, you don't have that to worry about or deal with, but certainly looking forward to, you know, pulling together all the data and information that we need to make some decisions. So appreciate you having me.
Great. Thank you. Do you guys have any additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda?
None for me.
All right, could I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll second.
All right, that carries. Communication from citizens? Don't think so. All right, presentation. So the first presentation is by Taylor Tucker, the Reef Resilience Coordinator from the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate your time, and have at it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for inviting me to be here today. I'm super excited to talk with you guys. Like Brad said, I'm the Reef Resilience Coordinator for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's Coral Reef Conservation Program. So I'm based in DEP's West Palm Beach office, and I help to coordinate coral reef management. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Florida's coral reef, coral bleaching, local management strategies, and ways you guys can help protect our nearby coral reef. So now I have a video for you all, and we'll see if it plays. You should be able to click.
Does not seem to be playing.
Alright, well, I can send you guys the link later and you can look at it. But it's basically just an intro to Florida's coral reef. So it spans 350 miles all the way from the St. Lucie Inlet down to the Dry Tortugas National Park in the Keys. And often we don't speak about corals like we do with other animals. However, they are in fact animals. And many people don't know how to classify corals, since they can look like plants or rocks, but they're actually invertebrates. Next slide. Cool. So when someone talks about a coral, they're talking about a big family of these large polyps. And the polyps are the tiny building blocks that make up the larger animals. Next slide. So corals are incredibly special organisms that make up a coral reef. So they are the living structure made up of coral polyps, which are tiny animals that are all living together to build this very essential habitat. Next slide. Corals live in symbiosis with a type of algae called zooxanthellae, which gives them their color. And more importantly, zooxanthellae give corals the majority of their nutrients. In return, the corals protect the zooxanthellae from predators. And they're also suspension feeders that eat zooplankton. So they catch food using tentacles around their mouth, and like jellyfish, these tentacles have stinging cells which help them to kill their prey. Florida's coral reef began forming 10,000 years ago. Different species of corals grow at different rates, and here we see some boulder corals growing on a nursery tree on the left and an endangered pillar coral on the right. Branching corals like staghorn and elkhorn grow much faster than these mounding reef-building corals. Florida's coral reef is made up of stony coral, soft coral, algae, and sponges. Like I mentioned earlier, it's 350 miles long and hosts over 30 million visitors each year, showcasing its critical economic importance to the state. Reef building or stony corals grow over a very long period of time, and they give the reef its vertical structure, and this creates a really important habitat for all the other reef creatures living on coral reefs. Every year, Florida's coral reef supports 71,000 jobs and generates $6.3 billion in sales and income for Monroe, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and Martin counties. And those are just the numbers. It's not so easy to put a number on things like having the reef as part of where you live and your way of life recreationally and commercially. And there's many different ways that you can get to know the reef, such as snorkeling, fishing, and my personal favorite, scuba diving. There's some animations on this slide as well. That was done yesterday. So, I have to click through mine as well. This is not to mention how a healthy coral reef can protect us from storms. Healthy coral reefs dissipate up to 97% of wave energy, and every year, Florida's coral reef provides $355 million in flood protection benefits to buildings and protects nearly $320 million in economic activity, and also more than $1 billion in protection during extreme storm events. For example, after Hurricane Irma in 2018, scientists found areas of the reef that were fractured, among other damage, from taking the force of those waves for us. There's some animations here as well.
Jay, better timing on the animation.
I know, we didn't sync this up before.
I think this one's new. So fish depend not only on coral reefs, but also mangroves and seagrass beds so they can maintain their growing populations. These animals spend their lives switching between the habitats and return to the reef when they are mature, which is why these habitats are so important as well and showcases the importance of protecting all of Florida's ecosystems since they are all connected.
Oh, sorry.
No more animations, I think. Last slide. Awesome. So Florida's coral reef is home to 517 species of fish, over 600 invertebrates, about 43 stony corals, and over 70 species of sponges. All of these photos were taken offshore of Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties, and it's not hard to realize why we need to protect such a diverse ecosystem. So Florida's coral reef is protected by state and federal laws. All of Florida's coral reef is protected by the Florida Coral Reef Protection Act, which states that all stony corals, octocorals, black corals, and fire corals within Florida waters are protected from take or attempting to take destruction, sale, or possession. The U.S. Restoring Resilient Reefs Act was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act last year in 2023. This act reauthorizes and modernizes the Coral Reef Conservation Act of 2000, strengthens jurisdictional coral reef conservation programs. So in addition to Florida, other jurisdictional programs are Puerto Rico, CNMI, U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as American Samoa, Hawaii, and other coral reef territories. And this act gives new innovative tools and resources to these states, territories, and communities. Additionally, the U.S. Endangered Species Act protects species at risk of extinction, and currently there are 7 listed species of coral found in Florida that are endangered. Coral reefs in southeast Florida are facing a variety of local and global stressors. Resilience is defined as the ability of a system to maintain key functions in the face of such stressors or pressures by either withstanding an impact or recovering from one when it happens. Coral reef resilience is ultimately about coral reef health, and for a community to be resilient, it must be able to survive, reproduce, compete for space and resources. Healthy reefs can better cope with and recover from major stress events like storms, mass bleaching events, and coral disease outbreaks. Indicators of a healthy reef include strong recruitment, high biodiversity, healthy herbivore biomass, low disease prevalence, and low anthropogenic impacts. So some of the global stressors that impact coral reefs include increased frequency and severity of extreme weather like hurricanes and storms, as well as marine heat waves, ocean warming, and ocean acidification, which all contribute to an increase in coral stress and lead to coral bleaching. Right, there's some animations on this one. So, getting into coral bleaching, healthy coral colonies are composed of numerous coral polyps, each of which contains zooxanthellae within their tissues. Should be too close. So getting into coral bleaching, healthy coral colonies will then become stressed when they're exposed to a stressor, and their natural stress response is to expel their zooxanthellae. The exact mechanism by which this occurs is the topic of a lot of research, but without the zooxanthellae, the coral polyps lose their coloration, and what's left is the clear, living coral tissue covering their white limestone skeleton. And because the corals turn from being colored to appearing white, that's why it's called coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is a natural stress response that can occur from several environmental disturbances. So in addition to extremes in solar radiation or sea temperature, it can also be caused by pollution, oil spills, low oxygen, changes in salinity, sedimentation, as well as disease. So there's the zooxanthellae going away. And then if you click again, that's what's left over. Alright, next slide. So coral bleaching is a gradual process, and here you can see the progression from healthy colored tissue to then bleached white tissue, and it has an intermediate phase where some color is retained as well as it has some white patches, and that's called paling or partial bleaching. So are bleached corals dead? The answer is no. So bleached corals are still living, it still has live coral tissue, but the zooxanthellae is gone, therefore so is its color. You're doing a great job. So if the stress is removed and the environmental conditions return to normal soon enough, you can click. That coral has the chance to regain their zooxanthellae and can survive the bleaching event. It typically takes weeks to months for corals to regain their color, which depends based on the species of coral. Now click again. Unfortunately, when water temperature increases, it only takes a matter of days to weeks for a coral to bleach. And if those stressors continue or they're severe enough for an extended period of time, it can lead to death. A main component of my work is to monitor which corals are bleaching as well as the rate of recovery after impact to determine the resilience of corals across Florida's coral reef. But whether the coral recovers from bleaching, there are still some noticeable long-term effects. Since the corals have lost their primary source of food, they have less energy available for skeletal growth and reproduction, and their overall health has been compromised, leaving them more susceptible to things like disease, predation, and death. Ultimately, dead corals result in a loss of habitat for other reef creatures, and coral bleaching matters because once these coral dies, reefs rarely come back. With few corals surviving, they struggle to reproduce, and the entire reef ecosystems on which people and wildlife depend deteriorate. Bleaching also matters because it's not an isolated phenomenon. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, between 2014 and 2017, around 75% of the world's tropical coral reefs experienced heat stress severe enough to trigger bleaching. For 30% of the world's reefs, that heat stress was enough to kill the coral. So here's an infographic from National Geographic showing the history of mass coral bleaching events. The first widespread bleaching event that we saw was from 1982 to 1983, and it was associated with an El Niño event. We then had global bleaching events in 1998 and again in 2010, actually due to a cold water event. But the longest event ever observed was from 2014 to 2016. With back-to-back years, it means corals didn't have any time to recover before they were hit again with intense stress. Recently, in early 2024, NOAA announced that coral reefs are experiencing the fourth global bleaching event. It started last summer here in the Caribbean, and it's been moving its way to the other regions of the world, including the Pacific. So coral bleaching impacts people's livelihoods, food security, and safety. As mentioned earlier, they're natural barriers that absorb the wave energy and the force of storm surges, keeping coastal communities safe. Bleached coral also compounds the overfishing crisis by removing links in the food web and depriving some fish and crustacean species of a place to spawn and develop. Anyone relying on these animals as a primary source of income or protein will be in trouble. Finally, reef tourism brings in billions of dollars each year and supports thousands of jobs. Bleached coral reefs devoid of magnificent species jeopardize it all. So coral bleaching can occur across different spatial scales, either at the colony level or across an entire reef as shown in the photos here. I actually took all of these photos myself last summer while diving in the dry Tequesta National Park. And they all came from the 2023 bleaching event. The most important thing to remember when looking at these photos is that hope is not lost because their tissue is still there and coral polyps are still alive. They're just missing their zooxanthellae due to stress. And we did see a high rate of recovery at these reefs. So switching gears, unlike global stressors, these local stressors are threats that impact our reefs here the most in Southeast Florida as compared to other areas of the world. They include unintentional harm caused by recreational diving and vessel anchoring on reefs, unsuitable fishing pressure and the introduction of invasive species, impacts from marine construction, and these pressures are all amplified by the dense population that lives on the Florida coastline. Further, with multiple stressors, it's critical to make decisions based on science and engage all stakeholders early and often, as these stressors need to be continually mitigated to effectively manage for long-term resilience in a changing climate. So, to mitigate and manage these stressors and impacts, the Coral Reef Conservation Program, or CRCP, was developed in the early 2000s. Our office focuses on 5 key threats to the reef listed here, and CRCP has a staff member or coordinator focused on each of these 5 threats. So, my office focuses on the Kristen Jacobs Coral Reef Ecosystem Conservation Area, which just got designated as an aquatic preserve last month, which is very exciting. So we're in the process of developing a management plan, and the ECA was named for the late Florida Congresswoman Kristen Jacobs, who is extremely dedicated to protecting the Florida environment. So this section of the reef runs through Martin County through Miami-Dade counties, and it's about 105 miles long. So the Maritime Industry and Coastal Construction's Impact Coordinator addresses coastal construction and maritime activities that could impact our coastal habitats and reefs. For example, activities could include infrastructure installation, beach renourishment, and dredge and fill operations. Construction from these activities could directly harm the corals as well as hard bottom habitat. For instance, if they are buried in sediment or experience long-term increases in turbidity from construction activities. Activities conducted by users who are unaware of the presence and vulnerability of the reefs can be reduced through strategies to increase the awareness and refine specific user practices. So the Awareness and Appreciation Coordinator works to educate residents and visitors about reefs through curricula, public outreach, and media campaigns.
Next slide.
The primary objective of the land-based Sources of Pollution Coordinator is to characterize the link between pollution and reefs in the ECA. By working with researchers, stakeholders, and agencies to monitor water quality, the coordinator can identify, design, and implement activities to reduce pollution affecting coral reef ecosystems. The primary goal of the Fishing, Diving, and Other Uses Coordinator is to address the impacts caused by activities such as fishing, diving, and boating. Actions associated with these activities often result in unseen and unintended impacts that alter reef ecosystems. The coordinator's primary purpose is to identify these impacts and assess how they affect marine organisms as well as their habitat. And for myself, as the Reef Resilience Coordinator, I work to understand the spatial variation of local and global stressors. I identify which actions may be effective against those stressors and decide where to implement priority actions to restore ecosystem services and maximize resilience potential through coral restoration. I also coordinate the CFAN and Bleach Watch citizen science programs. So CFAN, it's called the Southeast Florida Action Network. It's a citizen science reporting and response system designed to improve the protection and management of our offshore coral reefs. So if you're in or on the water, you can report any unusual sightings along Florida's coral reef, including marine debris, vessel groundings, anchor damage, invasive species, harmful algal blooms, fish disease, fish kills, discolored water, and more. There's no special training needed. You just report what, when, and where the incident was observed, either online or by using the hotline number. And if any of you are divers and you want to take your citizen science reporting to the next level, specifically for coral bleaching and disease, we encourage you all to join the Bleach Watch program. So Bleach Watch acts as an early warning system for coral bleaching in Southeast Florida, and the purpose of the program is to detect and monitor coral bleaching events. So I can't be everywhere on the reef all the time, so I rely on the citizens and stakeholders to submit photos and data, and I even got 20 reports just last weekend. So I've grown the program over time, and now we have over 1,000 observers in the program, and we've expanded to be all throughout the Florida Keys as well. So you can become part of the Observer Network by participating in a training session. I have an online recording that you can watch, and I'm also hosting a training at 4C Dive Shop in Boynton Beach next Thursday. So here are some other ways that you can help to protect coral reefs when you're directly on the water, and other actions that you can protect the reef in your daily life. So for one, you can use Palm Beach County's 4 mooring buoy sites. We have between 3 and 20 mooring buoys available at 4 sites between Jupiter and Boca Raton. Coordinates are available on the Palm Beach County website, but we're also happy to provide waterproof brochures for you to keep on your boat. You can also download the Esri Field Maps app and view the Coral Reef Locator map to see where your vessel is in relation to the reef. This helps you not illegally anchor on coral reef habitat and avoid damaging coral reef. And alternatively, it allows you to see where coral reef habitat is located and nearby mooring buoys to find the perfect snorkeling spot. When you're out on the water and in the water diving and snorkeling, you can report marine incidents like marine debris and invasive species to CFIN. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're dive certified, you can become a Bleach Watch observer and learn more about how to identify and report coral bleaching and disease. Lastly, and most importantly, you can remember that you can make a difference anywhere and everywhere to help protect our nearby coral reef. So some options are to look for sunscreen that has reef-safe ingredients containing zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Sometimes if it says reef-safe on the bottle or the brand itself, it may not actually be reef-safe, so checking the ingredients is always something I would recommend. Avoid fertilizing when heavy rainfall is predicted, and sweep up and store excess fertilizer, because all of that is ending up in our waterways. Join cleanups in North Palm Beach County with Loggerhead Marine Life Center and the Surfrider Foundation. You can also utilize the beach buckets at Jupiter Beach and Coral Cove and help support reusable alternatives to single-use plastic. And then you can also look for sustainable seafood options at seafoodwatch.org on the Monterey Bay Aquarium website. So if you would like more information about Florida's coral reef or to access our educational and virtual reality videos, you can visit our website at floridascoralreef.org. And with that, thank you all so much for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity and happy to answer any questions.
I do have a quick question. You mentioned that they have the beach bucket. They're already there. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's one concept that we had talked about. So they definitely are there, and they're set up for people to just community interaction by cleaning up. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, they have them at Civic Center. They have them all along Jupiter Beach. They have them at Loggerhead. They host cleanups every Saturday morning. The Friends of Palm Beach, they do pretty regular cleanups. That's on their website as well. And then Coral Cove definitely has buckets as well.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, may I? Thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
And can we use any of this to help our Tequesta citizens learn more about bleaching? And for example, can you send us a link or give it to the Community Development Department, and they can share it with us, and we can put it on our website, or we can put it in our village newsletter so that
Yeah.
people come informed?
That would be great. You have my PowerPoint, so if you just want to convert it into a PDF so it doesn't show up my notes, feel free to post it wherever.
I noticed, I heard you pinpoint the multiple sources of bleaching, the problem causing it. But I'm curious, in Florida, here in South Florida, when hurricane season ends and we segue into winter and theoretically the ocean waters get cooler, do you see any bleached coral start to come back when winter comes along?
Yeah, and that's something that we did last year. So we do bleaching monitoring surveys from the beginning of August through the end of October, because the heat stress is delayed. So even though it started getting hot in June, it takes about 8-degree heating weeks, so 8 weeks of accumulated temperature for them to show signs. So we're starting to see bleaching and paling, I'd say, like within the last week, it's kind of started to show. And that will continue until November, December, January, depending on the severity of the bleaching. So last year they didn't recover until February for some of the corals in the Keys, but up here we actually had an upwelling event where the current ran south instead of north, and it brought a lot of cool water, so our corals up here recovered months faster than the ones in the Keys. So it really depends on like how much temperature stress.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
So you had mentioned the designation of an aquatic preserve, and that's the reef that you handle, right?
Yeah.
That reef section, I guess.
Yeah, so now all of it's protected. So we have an aquatic preserve in the northern part, we have Biscayne National Park, and then the Marine Sanctuary, and then Dry Tortugas National Park. So.
I was just curious, when you say protected, what does that mean? Because there are some areas in, like, for instance, the Keys where you can't fish, all you can do is snorkel or dive, you can't touch anything. Is that kind of the idea, or is it less than that?
So you can't touch any of the coral like currently here, but I know what
Right.
you mean, like exclusion zones. And they wouldn't be implementing anything like that right now. We had a meeting with our stakeholder group yesterday, so we host public meetings twice a year. It's called the Southeast Florida Coral Reef Initiative. So we have a group of 60 people from all different stakeholder groups, and they come together and they help us working on our management plan right now. So our management plan will be published in the next year, and that will kind of outline everything in terms of what we're doing and all of our projects, but I don't think there's going to be any regulations besides like federal laws implemented right now.
Okay. And so what, if you had like a magic wand, you could say Village of Tequesta, what, how can we help you? And I know Tom just alluded to it. Is it just like advertising some of these programs like CFAN, getting the word out to the citizens in Tequesta?
Yeah. I would say
Anything
just
else?
awareness.
Awareness?
Building awareness in the community, I think, is the main thing that's helpful. Participating in cleanup programs, or just enjoying the marine life that we have, and like watching other people like share your joy and like enjoying the ecosystem. I think if people love something, they're gonna do more to protect it.
Yeah.
Can I jump in? How important is the suntan lotion situation? Because I don't know that everyone knows about that.
Yeah, so I would say that climate change is probably, the big thing here. But, sunscreen is an easy way to feel like you're making a difference. And water quality is a huge issue in Florida. So I think any effort to reduce the toxin load in the water is definitely going to be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen this firsthand down in the Keys, and it's an eerie thing when you see these beautiful corals and everything is just white.
Yeah.
It is bizarre, and this had come up in one of our past meetings. That's the reason I wanted you to come here and give your talk, and I really appreciate your time. One more question, it's a little bit unrelated, and I think the DEP is part of this. The fish down in the Keys, and I think even in Biscayne Bay, that were spinning. Have they come up with what is causing that?
Yeah, so great question. All of the reporting programs, we all talk to each other and check in once a month. So Kyle Luba, he's down in the Keys with FWC. He's been like the head of all those reports, and I talked to him last month, and they haven't figured it out exactly. We've done tons of water quality testing. We think it's just maybe an analyte that we've never tested before in the lab, so there's no like procedure to test for it. So it might be something that we haven't just not been able to detect. But they're thinking it's some kind of water contaminant, but we just haven't been able to source it. And also, the spinning has definitely calmed down. There's like almost no reports of it now, so.
Weird.
Maybe it was just a flare-up, but yeah, that was definitely
You
weird.
guys heard about that, right?
No, I didn't.
And there was even one in Tampa, too.
Really?
One case in Tampa. They think that they were swimming. Yeah, they were just spinning in a circle, mostly the sawfish. which
But
is.
there were other fish species as well, right?
Yeah, it was, the most concerning one was the sawfish, because it's like very endangered, and there's only like a certain number left in the population. They're also a very deep water species, and they were coming up shallow, so that was weird. But yeah, I haven't heard anything concrete.
Sounds very suspicious.
Yeah, because it was all over the news down there for a while, and
Yeah.
then I don't really hear anything more about it. And I went on the website, and not much of an update with regard to the cause.
Yeah, they've
Those-
spent a lot of money trying to figure it out, and they just haven't been able to pinpoint it yet,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But there's some analytes that like certain labs don't test for, things like that.
Okay. Excellent.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we had, the village council had, is it Lanisha Fix from
Oh,
the
yeah.
Reef Institute,
Yeah.
came maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And so she shared kind of what they're doing and also
Mm-hmm.
some of the, I guess, like the synthetic corals or the stuff they're trying to do to create new corals. Can you maybe share what they're doing and how that relates to what you guys do?
Yeah, so I actually was with Lanita yesterday. She's one of our main vice chairs for our stakeholder group, so she's great. I work with her a lot. We have a program called the Florida's Coral Reef Resilience Program, and I'm one of the heads of the coral restoration team. So we meet with all of our restoration practitioners every month. So there's like Coral Restoration Foundation, there's Mo Marine Lab, there's the Reef Institute, there's Florida Aquarium, University of Miami, and Nova Southeastern, and those are like the main people doing coral restoration right now, as well as some others in the Keys. And so what we do with them is we give a lot of grant funding towards their projects. We have like resilience funding as well as like restoration funding, where we have about $9 million that we spend out every single year. So she's one of our awardees for the grants, and they're actually building a new facility that we're gonna go check out next week and to expand their operations. So yeah, she also, they developed a movie recently with some partners in the Keys and NSU about their work, so you can try and find the link to that online.
Yeah, that, we could put that on the website too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be good.
I have I have her presentation.
Oh, yeah, that'd be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I sent it to everyone. You probably.
Yeah, they do great stuff though. All of our restoration practitioners, they were the first ones to outplant in Palm Beach County.
Do you feel the state could be doing more to support these efforts? I mean, this is like a huge deal. Do you feel like, Senator said $9 million, I mean, how much do we really need?
Yeah, I mean, well, we just got funding to have $9 million for the next, I'd say 20 years, and we've really focused on this new act that just got passed this past year. So it's called the Florida's Coral Reef Recovery and Initiative Act, and that's going to be funding basically the operations, the grow out, the expansion, the transport for all of like the baby corals for the next 20 years. So I feel like there's definitely been a heavier emphasis on restoration. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job right now.
Nice.
All right, anything else?
Quick question now, just out of curiosity, say there's bleaching on the reef out here or anywhere. What level or degree is used to determine when it needs to have these restoration corals applied to it?
Yeah, so restoration is kind of like an intervention tool that we use to help rebuild the reef. It's not necessarily like a fix-all for bleaching, because you really need the temperature stress to go down, right? So you can outplant corals, but those outplanted corals are still going to be affected by bleaching. So that affects everything, you know. So if we don't lower the carbon emission, then, you know, the outplanted corals may not be doing well either. But we have been doing genetic sequencing of the corals. We're just finishing that. We're developing a genetic management plan to build out the most resilient corals that we can and run thermally tolerant, you know, experiments. And so when you have a lot of genetics in the population and like diversity and resilience, outplanting those corals, then they have a better chance. So if that kind of explains your question. In areas where they're really affected by bleaching, and say that reef was degraded, you can outplant corals there. But typically, we don't use bleaching as like an indicator for
Okay.
restoration.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, can I ask one last question? How much does the coral bleaching and the reef dying impact water clarity? Is there like a correlation between clarity and reef health?
Yes, I would say that the bleaching doesn't impact the water quality would impact the bleaching, so it'd be the other way around. So if you have like pollution in the water or toxins or there's a lot of sediment, that's going to cause the coral to bleach, but the bleaching coral doesn't really affect the water
The
quality.
clarity itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and my number and my email is up there. I love to talk about this, so you can call me anytime. You can email me with any other questions you have.
Okay, well,
Thank
thank
you.
Thank you
I
very
live
you.
around here, so happy to
you,
come
Taylor.
back.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, next presentation, Mr. Michael Tompkins, Senior Project Manager, Ecosystem Restoration Planning and Project Management Section of the South Florida Water Management District.
Save me the trouble
Thank
of
you.
having to spit that out.
Yeah, thank you for coming, thank you for your time, and I'll let you get started.
All right, super, and, so as Brad mentioned, my name is Mike Tompkins, I'm a Senior Project Manager at the Water Management District. My primary project is the Locks River Watershed Restoration Project. This project was authorized by Congress in 2020, and it's a partnership that we have between the Army Corps of Engineers and the Water Management District, and so the federal government and the state cost share the design and construction and maintenance of this project throughout its life. So the purpose of the Locks River Watershed Restoration Project is to improve the freshwater flows to the northwest fork of the Locks River, which is a nationally designated wild and scenic river, and to restore the hydrology and connectivity of wetlands and watersheds that form the historic headwaters of the river. Go ahead to the next one, there we go. And then the objectives of the project, objective number 1, restore the wet and dry season flows to the nationally designated wild and scenic northwest fork of the Locks River. Objective 2 is to restore oysters, seagrass, and other estuarine communities in the Locks River estuary. Objective 3, increase the spatial extent and function of wetlands. Objective 4, restore the watershed connections among the Locks River headwater natural areas to improve hydrology, sheet flow, hydro periods, natural storage, and vegetative communities. And then objective 5, to restore the abundance and diversity of native plant and animal species in the watershed, including natural areas in the river and estuary. Next one there. So this is sort of an overview of the Locks River watershed. The project broke our different elements into 3 different flowways, and so we've got flowway 1, 2, and 3. You can see them color-coded on the map. So flowway 3 is to the north, flowway 2 is this impoundment to the west, and flowway 3 is to the south. We're bordered pretty much to the north by the C-44 canal, and to the south by the C-51 canal, to the west by the L-8 canal. Within flowway 3, there's a component up in Jonathan Dickinson State Park. That's the Kitchen Creek restoration. Number 2 there, Moonshine Creek and Gulf Stream East. We're going to be putting in a weir in Moonshine Creek and then doing some regrading in Gulf Stream East. Cypress Creek Canal, we've got some structures that Martin County put in a few years back. We'll be automating those so they don't have to send people out to maintain them and open and close them when storms are approaching or seasons change. It's also going to be a spreader canal that's going to pull water out of the Cypress Creek Canal and spread it into the Cypress Creek natural area. And then we'll be building a flow-through marsh, which we'll call Gulf Stream West, to try to attenuate flows up in that flowway 3. And then Palmar East is just doing some grading and some plugging of ditches to try to restore the wetlands and the hydrology of this very large area. Flowway 2 will be an above-ground impoundment. It's got 9,500 acre-feet of storage planned. Also have 4 aquifer storage and recovery wells that will go into the flowway 2. Those are those like yellow plus signs that you see on the west side. That may not actually be where they go, but I mean, just conceptually, we plan to install ASR wells in flowway 2. And so that'll be the primary source of new water that comes in to the Locks River Northwest Fork. And then flowway 1, we've actually already constructed G160 and G161. The project is really just going to look and make sure that those structures are built to the proper specifications and they don't need any modifications. We assume they're going to be in pretty good shape, though. Then we'll also do some work in the Grassy Waters Triangle. This is a section of Grassy Waters Preserve that's just to the north of North Lake and just west of the beeline right there. Some over drying that's going on. We're gonna try to hydrate some wetlands in that area. And then we're gonna build a pump station that will pull water out of Indian Trail Improvement District, pump it into the M Canal, that would then route that water through Grassy Waters Preserve, and then it would go through Flowway 1 to the north to be discharged through G92 into the northwest fork of the Locks River. So just kind of an overview map there. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what are the project benefits? Big benefit is to restore flows to the northwest fork of the Locks River. We anticipate that the project would achieve 91% of the target flows in the dry season and 98% of the target flows in the wet season. This is expected to promote the recovery of riverine freshwater species and estuarine zones for fish, seagrass, oysters, and other protected species that are present in the Locks River. The project is also going to improve watershed wetland hydrology. We'll be improving 17,000 acres of existing or former agricultural lands, and improving 10,000 acres of existing natural areas. Overall, we'll be improving or connecting what will be about 78,000 acres of habitat. And in addition to just, the environmental benefits, there's also going to be recreational opportunities that the project will provide. There'll be kayak launches, some modifications to some of the trails, systems, bridges, and things of that nature to improve hiking opportunities in the Locks River watershed. Next slide. So this is the project schedule. The Army Corps publishes an update every year. This is the integrated delivery schedule, which we call the IDS. It's got sort of a roadmap for how all of the projects that are part of SERP will be sequenced and constructed. What I've got here is just the timeline that we've got for the Locks River project. So you can see there's some different colors up here. We've got black and blue. Black means that it's the Army Corps' responsibility. Blue means it's the Water Management District's responsibility. And so for this particular project, the Water Management District will be constructing all of the features for the Locks River Watershed Restoration Project. I guess I could continue to explain here. So you see these dotted lines, that indicates when we'll be in our design phase of the project. The solid lines indicate when we'll be in the construction phase, and those diamond symbols indicate when construction would be complete and we would be testing to make sure that the project is operating the way that it's intended. And so basically for all the components in Flowway 1, 2, and 3, we're in design right now, with the exception of those ASR wells. Those aren't going to start the design process until 2027. And so we're in design presently, and we're looking to start construction in FY26 in Flowway 1, and part of the construction in Flowway 2 is also going to kick off in FY26, and in Flowway 3 also. And so pretty much FY26 is when most of the construction gets going, and then we look to have all that construction wrapped up by 2032, all the testing complete, and everything fully operational by 2034. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit more of a detailed look at what we've got going on in Flowway 1. So to the south, we see the S100 pump station. Ultimately, what that's going to do is pull water out of the Indian Trail Improvement District's upper basin. Actually, I'm sorry, the lower basin. So the water quality within ID is really, really good in comparison to some of the other sources that we look at for the project. And so what they do with that water presently is it's often discharged to tide. It's sent to the C51 canal, and then it's just lost to tide at that point. And so rather than allow that water to leave the watershed, we're going to capture it, pump it into the M canal. That would route it over to Grassy Waters, and then it continues the path up north there. And of the Grassy Water Triangle, we can just see a little bit closer shot of where that's at. The purpose in Flowway 1 is just to capture that excess water that we would lose to tide, restore and enhance connectivity for wildlife. That's the primary purpose of the triangle. We are expecting to execute an SOW for the design of Flowway 1 in the next couple weeks. We're trying to get that really done in FY '24 is the goal right now. Next slide. Flowway 2, this is sort of the crown jewel of the Locks River Watershed Restoration Project. This is the C18 West impoundment with the 4 co-located ASR wells. The purpose of the impoundment is to provide water delivery to the northwest fork of the Locks River to achieve the restoration flow targets. Water will be stored during the wet season and recovered during the dry season to establish a more natural seasonal delivery of water to the river. We are capturing water that would otherwise be delivered outside the Locks River watershed and redirected to the northwest fork of the river. The impoundment will be filled by discharges that come from JW Corporate Wildlife Management area, that's just to the west of the impoundment, and also from the C18 West Canal, which is this canal that runs just on the north boundary of the impoundment. It collects water from the Hungryland Slough area. And then we'll recover groundwater from the Florida aquifer for those ASR wells. Just kind of get a rough idea. This is the Mecca property. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's pretty much out in Indian Trail Improvement District. It was acquired by the district, I think, in around 2014. It's just been kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen. And it's a great opportunity for us to use this property that we've had for quite some time. It'll have a embankment that goes all the way around it. We'll store about 7.5 feet of water inside the impoundment. And then during the dry season, when the flows in the Locks River sort of decrease, we'll release water from the impoundment to supplement those flows. Next slide, please. This is sort of an artist's conception of what the impoundment's going to look like once it's completed. In the southeast corner, that's a water repumping plant that the city of West Palm Beach currently has in place out there. There'll be just right next to that, there'll be a recreation facility which will allow for folks to access the interior of the impoundment so that they can enjoy kayaking or hiking along the crest of it or something of that nature. And then that's also going to tie into the C18 West Canal, so there'll be a lot of areas for folks to enjoy kayaking and fishing and things like that. We executed a design contract with Arcadis in FY '23. We've already completed survey and geotech for the project. Modeling is just about wrapped up right now. We're kind of reviewing the modeling for groundwater and H&H right now. And then we should be starting preliminary design in October of this year, and then we'll have intermediate and final design phases after that. Next slide, please. So zoomed in a little bit on Flowway 3. What we're not showing here is the work that's being done in Jonathan Dickinson State Park. That's just off the screen to the top right. And we're also not seeing the stuff that's called Gulfstream East. So Gulfstream East, that's just on the east side of I-95, north of Cypress Creek, and it was a former citrus field that's got a bunch of ditches out there. Ultimately, what we'll do is we'll regrade that area, fill in all the old agricultural ditches, try to recreate some of the flow patterns that were out there naturally. That'll feed into Moonshine Creek, it'll feed into Cypress Creek, it'll create all sorts of excellent wetland habitat out there. So that's what's going on Gulfstream East. Gulfstream West, that's that triangle just to the west of 95 that you see the red around there. That'll be a flow-through marsh. Idea there is that we can capture flows that are coming from Hope St. Lucie Conservancy District that are sort of flashy. We can pump them into Gulfstream West and kind of hang on to them for a little bit to attenuate the high flows, maybe provide a little bit of treatment at the same time, and then release from Gulfstream West when the time is right there. Palmar East is mostly going to be connectivity and hydrologic restoration. That's that section that's called 9 Gems, sort of big section to the top that you see there. We'll be filling in some ditches there, building a few structures, and just trying to connect that whole area so that it's one big continuous hydrated wetland. Right now it's a little bit overdrained. There's some agricultural ditches and all sorts of things that just drain that stuff really fast. We'll slow that down. Mac Dairy Spreader Swale. Did I skip over? No, I think we're good. Mac Dairy spreader swale, that is, I wish I had a laser pointer. It is sort of in the center, and what we'll do is we're gonna, yeah, there we go, right there. We'll build a pump station that's gonna pull water out of Cypress Creek Canal, that's gonna pump it into this spreader swale, and then that water is gonna sort of sheet flow to the east, and that meets up with the South Fork of Cypress Creek Canal. So that's the Cypress Creek Weir, and there'll also be some berm improvements that go on there so that we ensure that we don't impact those neighborhoods that are just to the north of the Cypress Creek Canal in that area. Also going to be automating some culverts there. I think that's the S114s, if I'm seeing that from here. They're already built. We're just going to go out there and put some automation, include them in our SCADA network so they can be operated remotely. So what's the purpose of all this? Yeah, restore the hydro period, improve the ecological function of the wetlands, improve the timing of the discharges to the northwest fork, restore the historic topography, reduce overdraining, enhance habitat for wildlife by restoring the connectivity and hydrology. And Flowway 3 design contract executed with WSP in FY23. Survey and geotech have just wrapped up for that project. We're currently doing modeling for the Kitchen Creek portion of it, and we've also got started with the Gulfstream East portion, and they're working on a regional model as well for Flowway 3 right now, but making great progress in Flowway 3. Next slide. So some of the early work that we've been doing, Gulfstream East, I've kind of highlighted it in green here, so it's just to the east of I-95. So as you're leaving Jupiter, heading north on I-95, right as you go over the Cypress Creek Canal, there's a bridge. On the east side of the road would be the Gulfstream East property. What we've been doing out there to this point is just trying to handle the exotic vegetation that's out there. So you can see this image on the left from June 6th. All that vegetation that you see out there is really Brazilian pepper. And so what we've done is we went out there and we've done a bunch of mowing, and now we're working on doing some herbicides. So we're trying to knock all that pepper down so that when we get this wetland restoration kicked off, we don't have to deal with a bunch of exotic vegetation. So, and I mentioned, you can kind of see all those agricultural ditches that run north and south for the most part throughout this area. Those are all going to be filled in and regraded, and we're going to kind of try to restore some of the natural depressions that are there, try to find some of the natural flow paths and see if we can get those restored as well. But just real early stages right now. I think our biggest question mark right now is how do we deal with this ditch that runs through the center and kind of bisects the north from the south, and so we're working through some options on that right now. Next slide, please. This is just some of the equipment that we used at Gulfstream East. They had this big, essentially mower that would go up to one of these Brazilian peppers, and within about 3 seconds it would be a pile of sticks. So really, really quick. I think that's about a 450 acre parcel that we mowed north and south to get rid of as much of that pepper as we could. And then the next phases of that, we're going out there every 6 months or so and treating with herbicide to make sure the pepper doesn't come back. Next slide. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then I've got one more slide after that that's got some contact information, that's got my email and phone number. There's another project manager that works on Flowway 1, that's Meg Tickner. She's just getting started on Flowway 1 right now. Like I said, they haven't really got an SOW that should be executed very soon. And then Jen leads is overall in ecosystem restoration and planning. So in case you guys have questions after this meeting, these would be the best contacts. So with that, I guess I could answer any questions that you guys have.
Complicated.
Jill, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Mine was just-
Ladies first, go ahead.
Thank you. So, just because I hike a lot in the area, I love what you're doing. Will any of it be accessible by hikers to be able to enjoy the area, or is this fully for, restoration for the water?
Great question. Me too. I like
I
getting out
would love to
hiking.
have-
Through JD is one of my favorite areas
Right.
to go and hike. I I think that the project is really going to enhance hiking opportunities. It's definitely not gonna limit them. Where, the Palmar East property, which is just directly, west of JD,
Okay.
huge property also. We're looking at getting that tied into to create sort of a loop for the Ocean to Lake Trail,
Oh, nice.
so that you'd have kind of a northern section of it too.
Sure.
So we're working on that with Martin County also. 'Cause all that land that we own, so yeah, you can see that 9 gems parcel there. We actually own that shared with Martin County, and so we're partners in managing that area. But yeah, absolutely, we are looking to enhance hiking opportunities. There's also, as part of the Ocean to Lake Trail, and I don't think this figure shows it, but it's in Gulfstream East. There's a crossing on the Ocean to Lake Trail where it goes over Hope Grove Ditch, which right now is a low water crossing. We're gonna build a bridge so that you don't have to go through the water, so
That's great.
yeah, nice improvement there.
Is it all in connection with that Loxaluchi area off a bridge? Are you guys in connections with them? I know they bought a bunch of that land to preserve it. I know that's over in Martin County, but
Right, yeah, I think they're within our boundaries.
Yeah.
It's where we get water that's gonna be ultimately diverted into our Kitchen Creek restoration.
okay.
I don't think there's a lot of coordination necessarily with Loxalucy, but.
I think it's Laxaloo.
Yeah, right, I've
Lucci,
only
Lucy,
seen
yeah,
some
I know.
signs when driving on Bridge Road.
Okay.
But no, I don't
Thank
think we
you.
have a lot of relationship.
Well, thank you for your presentation. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome.
Are you or any of your colleagues on, excuse me, the, what I think is called the Loxahatchee River Coordinating Council that was created by FDEP to look at, well, to engage all of the local governments in the watershed for the Loxahatchee on ways and means to reduce pollution into the waterways? Are you aware if any South Florida Water Management District people attend those meetings?
I think you're referring to the Locks River Management Coordination Council. That's usually they hold those meetings at the Locks River Environmental Control District.
It could
Is that
be,
the one?
yeah,
I
it
think
could
that's what
be.
that's what it's called.
Yeah, there's LR Locks River Project Initiative is another one that I always kind of wonder which one we're talking about.
So you guys do participate?
Absolutely. I think that's mostly a partnership with the DEP and the Water Management District to come up, with a plan for how we're gonna conduct the restoration. That's where the targets for what our flow rates at the Lanehart Dam really came from, was with that partnership. And so I know the district scientists are, definitely engaged in that management, the LRMCC.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actively working on updating the management plan for that presently.
Right, that's
So,
right.
Yeah, absolutely, it's attended by the district and we participate.
So, trying to figure out how to phrase this. So, the water that a large part of the new fresh water flow that would end up at the North Fork of the Loxahatchee River, that's going to emanate from Lake Okeechobee, correct?
No, I don't think so. And that's actually a great question, and that was when we were, in the development and the planning and in the PIR phase. The big question is where can we get water? What are the different sources? And certainly we looked at getting water from Lake Okeechobee. We also looked at getting water from what a lot of people call the rock pits out west in the C51 L8 area.
Yeah.
And basically, those alternatives were all rejected because of water quality concerns. So Lake Okeechobee has a lot of water quality concerns, high turbidity, nutrients, cyanobacteria blooms, things like that. The rock pits, the C51, L8, had some other issues, different issues. Most of those were related to conductance in the water being a little higher than we'd like. And so the source of the water that's going to be going to the Locks River will be mostly from runoff that's coming off Indian Trail Improvement District or from natural lands that we've improved our capacity to hold water there. And the water quality within Indian Trail Improvement District, because it's kind of a low intensity area, is really good in comparison. comparison to these other sources that
Well, I guess what's confusing me is that it appears to be that there's a canal interconnecting with the lake that runs to the proposed impoundment area, which would eventually send water into the slough. But you're saying that that water in that canal is not coming from Lake Okeechobee?
Correct, yeah, it's not presently. And so there is what is called the M0 canal that runs east and west, ties into the LA Canal on the west side,
Right.
and that's also going to tie into our impoundment on the east side. That canal primarily runs to the west right now, and so when ITID is working to drain their system, they'll pump water into their impoundment, which is also to the west, and then that flows out to the LA Canal. So that's just another path for them to discharge water. Primarily ITID discharges water to the south to the C51 canal, but they've got some capacity limitations. So if they've got a lot of water to get rid of, they'll pump water to the west and discharge it to the LA Canal, but water only goes to the west. We can't pull water back from the LA east into the impoundment.
Well, you just solved a major concern that I had, was that if FDEP was working to reduce pollutants in the Loxahatchee River, but we were gonna add Lake Okeechobee water to the river, it sounded like it was a waste of the time. Still, conflicting things, but I'm glad you told me this. Are we able to use like a link or something to share with our citizens in Tequesta relative to the work you're doing?
Well, trying to think of like what's the best thing that we could share. And so the Army Corps of Engineers has a Loxahatchee watershed restoration webpage that contains the project implementation report, which has a lot of detail. I think that still might be the best link to share if we were sharing any link.
And you said Army Corps?
Yeah, Army Corps, and I'd be happy to dredge up that link and share it with you all after this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michelle?
No,
No.
good, thank you.
Wait.
Yeah, I just have one question. Michael, on one of the last slides here, you mentioned a couple of benefits here: improve flow, restore topography, improve timing of discharges, reduce overdraining. Are there any valuable lessons from your perspective that have allowed us to get to the current place we're in where we require these improvements? Has something occurred over the past that has allowed for this to occur? Perhaps lessons that the council here could benefit from understanding?
Well, really what we've got in the Locks River is a really effective drainage system. And, that being the primary purpose of the Central and South Florida project was to drain. That worked really a little bit too well. And so the purpose really of the locks is to try to reverse some of that overdraining. And so that's what we're doing, all this regrading out here. But, the big thing really is, I don't know, I imagine some of you have been down the Locks River from Riverbend. You can kayak. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't done it, absolutely recommend it. It's gorgeous. And just very recently in June, and this happens frequently in the dry season, the flows at the Lanehart Dam were down in the 10 CFS range. Our MFL for flows over that dam are about 35 CFS. Our target really is quite a bit higher than that, 50 to 68 CFS, depending on where you look. And so, because we have these issues, this overdraining and this lack of water going, down the river, ultimately that's what we're trying to restore. We're trying to get that back to the way it used to be. We essentially have cut off the headwaters to the Locks River, and so we're trying to kind of reverse, some of that stuff. So rather than just draining everything straight out to the ocean, to try to hold things, on the landscape, which is going to improve conditions, habitat conditions for all sorts of fish and wildlife and native plant communities. When you have a field like this that's totally drained, it's a perfect environment for exotic species to come into. When we regrade this, it's going to be a lot wetter out there. It's almost difficult for these exotic plants to even grow in those areas. And so just as a way to maintain these big properties, one of the important things is just to put some water out there.
So can I ask a follow-up question? Like, how would a field like this become overdrained?
Yeah, it's all this system of canals that they've dug out there. And the purpose of that was to drain it for agriculture. And they essentially have channelized everything so that it drains very efficiently into Cypress Creek to the south, or it goes to the east into Moonshine Creek and right into the Locks River. But ultimately, when it rains out there, it drains off the land, almost instantly. And if we just plug those ditches and kind of disconnect those connections, the water's gonna get held on the land, it'll raise the groundwater table. That water will eventually work its way into the creeks and river, but it'll be a lot slower.
Got it, thank you.
So I have a follow-up to that, because that was a great question, Wade. Are there things that are being put into place so that we don't get to this position again in other land? I mean, I love that we're taking back some of this land and bringing it back to nature. Are there other parcels that you guys are looking at? Can we expand this to make it, keep our native?
Oh, within the Locks
Well,
watershed,
just,
or-
yeah, I mean, all over our county. Because these are huge parcels that were used for agriculture, which of course we needed, but are no longer being used. Are there other areas that you guys have your eyes on?
We certainly have thousands of acres that we've got on the wish list.
Yeah.
It's a prioritization process,
Sure.
which one do we need for a project? Is there a project that's in mind presently? Does it have funding? That's gonna move it up on the list
Right.
for acquisitions, but yeah, there's a lot of land that we'd like to acquire.
It comes to my head, but mine right away is where Indian Town Road curves into Beeline on your northeast corner. I guess they call it the Hungry Land, or it's like that area. But they're selling little parcels you can't even get to. I mean, literally, they're
Right.
like acre, 5 acre, and you'll never be able to build on it. And I just think to myself, oh, when's the day that that's gonna become a residential area? And it's just prime for being bought and keeping the way it is for the drainage and the runoff and the animals. So that's just where my mind goes when I see
Really
those.
great example
Uh-huh.
of, what could happen, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of parcels. I think that's the Be a Man, Buy Land
Yes.
parcels that
Yes,
you're
him.
referring to over there, which,
Yeah.
and the Water Management District with willing sellers, we've approached, sellers have approached us, and we've
Yeah.
approached some sellers to try to acquire some of those parcels, and I think long-term, we'd like to acquire a lot of them, but
That'd be
there's
great.
thousands of them. It'd probably
I
take
know.
30 years, that's what I'm told, to
Yeah.
maybe acquire all of them. But that is something that I think we're working toward. I think the timeline on it is probably
Okay.
extended, but, yeah, that's a
Thank you.
concern.
Thanks.
So my question, I see that you have a lot of old ag land that you're utilizing.
Right.
Are there tests done before you start flooding ag land? Tests for fertilizers, pollutants, chemicals that may have been used in the past?
Yep, absolutely, great question. And I mean, it'd be kind of bad planning, right, to
I had to ask the question, though.
A project like this, right, on some polluted land because there's examples throughout the state where that's happened, and there's been sort of ecological disasters as a result. But yes, absolutely, we do that sort of testing. So on this particular property, for example, we have a real estate group that goes out. We hire typically consultants that can go and they collect samples at a lot of different locations, and look for a host of different contaminants, from toxic metals to pesticides, radioactive material, other types of hazardous waste. They look at the whole gamut of things that could cause problems out there. And before we can even start construction, we've got to have that assessment conducted. We've got to send all those results up to the DEP, to the Army Corps, to Fish and Wildlife, so they can review what we're seeing out there. And everybody has to kind of sign off on it and say that, this is acceptable for us to go ahead and construct the project on. So absolutely that happens, and we are certainly concerned about making sure that there is no hazardous, toxic, or radioactive waste present out here that could cause any problems.
I guess to follow up on that, after this project is completed, water's being, held in that ag land? Is there ongoing testing moving past that that will, prove what you guys had tested prior?
Actually, another great question.
Full.
Yeah, we had somebody go out there beforehand, they said it was all great, does anybody check, right? So absolutely we do. After construction is over, before testing gives us the green light to go ahead and do construction. After the construction is over, we've got that operational testing and monitoring phase, those are the diamonds that we see on the IDS schedule. During that period of time, we're going out and we're taking confirmation samples that the sediments aren't going to be contaminated, that the surface waters aren't going to be contaminated, and that this project itself isn't going to cause any downstream effects, like it's not going to have a bunch of erosion and carry a bunch of sediment off the site and discharge that into the creeks or something like that, or take pollutants with it. And so there are assessments that are done before we actually turn this into a fully operational project during that testing phase to ensure that we don't have those types of situations present.
That makes me think of the herbicide that's applied for the invasive. So there's herbicide being applied to all that parcel. Where does that go?
Great question. So there's a lot of different herbicides that our vegetation management folks can use to take care of the types of vegetation that we see out there. They know that we plan to start construction out here in about 2 years. They know that we intend to flood this property, and so they've made decisions that are compatible with that plan. They've picked herbicides that degrade very quickly, so that by the time we flood this, they'll be gone. They've also, go through this not just with an airplane and they spray the whole plot. We've actually got people out there with backpacks that go from plant to plant and they spray them individually, so we don't just, spray the whole area. We try to minimize the amount of herbicide that we're using out there in general. But those types of analysis, like we did, the before, we'll do those after and make sure that we don't have that step present. That's a great question.
So how much filtration happens at like the Loxahatchee Slough and Grassy Waters before that water even hits the Loxahatchee? And then if that's is happening, or do you have any tips for us for what we can do to clean the water in our own stormwater system before it gets into Loxahatchee?
Do you guys does your stormwater system discharge right to the Loxahatchee?
Yes, on the Dover Ditch. It's coming to
The Dover Ditch, which I think we're doing a living shoreline or water filtration system there, right?
Yeah, actually, one of the projects is working at Dover Ditch to filter the water and the sediments and everything in the Dover Ditch.
Yeah, that sounds, that maybe this isn't the area I would consider this one anyway, but the types of things that would be beneficial, I suppose, swales, something that, water that's coming, runoff that's coming off streets or something, if that goes into some sort of a filtration area like a swale and then that percolates into the groundwater or then is discharged into the surface water, at least we get a little bit of settling in the swale. That helps to filter out some of the contaminants. It sounds like you guys are doing some things like that.
But do the Loxahatchee Slough and those other grassy waters, is that cleaning the water before it gets here, or
That
not
would
much?
be excellent water quality. Everything that comes, Grassy Waters is used as a drinking water source for the city. The city is extremely picky about the type of water that gets put in there in the first place. So they don't even like to take water from the rock pits. They're looking at conductance, that they're worried about everything going into that. And so the water that comes out of there as a result of that is actually spectacularly good. And I'm not sure about the water quality in Loxahatchee Slough, but I would expect it's very good also, because it should be mostly a rain-driven system, not a whole lot of influence from runoff.
Thank you.
Last chance. Okay. All right. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Michael. Appreciate it, your time and your presentation.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next presenter, Sue, is that you on?
Yeah, that's Sue.
All right. Thanks for holding on.
Are you still up for this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So our next speaker is Susan Pinello. She's the president and co-founder of the Jupiter Narrows Conservation Alliance, and she's going to talk about the Jupiter Narrows Restoration Project.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. Are you able to share my screen? I'm sharing it from my perspective, but can you see it? I guess that's my question.
It looks like we are, yeah. I see,
Okay.
I see a Jupiter Narrows thing.
Okay. Great.
Meg, I think just maximize, there you go.
There you go.
Oh, I see that now. Well, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to share what we're doing with the Jupiter Narrows Conservation Alliance. The Jupiter Narrows is really a very special place to me. My grandmother bought in one of the Beach Road buildings, Lamar, pre-construction in 1969. So my family has been right there on the Jupiter Narrows ever since, and my husband and I had the opportunity to buy at Lamar in about 13 years ago. So it's very near and dear to our hearts. So I'm sure if you all spend time on the water in the Jupiter Narrows, you've seen the condition of the mangrove islands along there. I don't know how long you've all been in town, but I started putting together a photo album for a 50th anniversary party we had for our building. And when I pulled out these pictures from the 1990s, I mean, I knew the mangroves were deteriorating, but this shocked me to remind myself of what they looked like when I was younger. So we've got 3 vantage points. Here on the left, we're at Lamar, which is 375 Beach Road, looking south to the lighthouse. Here it is in 1995, here it is in 2022. So you can see how thin they've become. This one's really striking, looking straight out. I remember as a kid standing, in fact, that's my little kids out there on the dock, and you couldn't even see the navigational channel directly across. The mangroves were so thick. And we remember fondly just all the birds, hundreds and hundreds of birds in there, and all kinds of wildlife around it. You can see the manatee right here underwater. This is what it looks like now. And in fact, this right-hand side has already broken off. And then now we're looking north, so this is before the Cliveden building was built, so these were just empty docks looking north, and there was a big lush island there, and now, if you've been up there, you've probably noticed it's split into 2 islands. So, long story short, this was about 3 or 4 years ago. I was looking at these pictures, and I was like, I've got to do something. And I'm not a marine biologist or anything, so the first thing I did was I picked up the phone and I called FWC. And I happened to catch a woman who, to this day, I talk to. I absolutely love her. She's now with NOAA, but she came out with a representative from the Palm Beach County Environmental Resources Management Group. And they snorkeled around the islands, and they agreed that these are so vital to the ecosystem and really should be saved. And we heard Taylor talk a little bit earlier about the importance of the mangroves and seagrasses, but I mean, this is where the fish spawn. This is where the manatee get their food. And I do still see a lot of different species there, but definitely less than we did when they were more lush. In fact, FWC shared with me a comparison of 1977 to 2022, and you can see. So let's start at the south. This was one big island that extended all the way under the bridge. Now there's 2, but the one on the northern side is barely there. The second island here has completely disappeared. This is an open area. And then the third and fourth were, my recollection as a kid was they were almost connected. It was almost one big island. But now you can see, not only are they separated and smaller, but this top one here has split in 2. So, alarming, just alarming. This is what it looks like from the ground. And again, if you're out there in your boats or swimming or kayaking, you see this. This is the southernmost island, right by Ocean Villas, right just north of the bridge. And this is what it looks like from a different angle. This is the one straight out from Lamar, and this is the side I was telling you is already have broken off and going by the wayside. And then this is what is north of Cliveden, just on the edge of Coral Cove Park. where it has split into two. And we had some experts come out and look at this, and their comment was, oh my God, these, from the water, these look like mangroves do after a hurricane has hit. So anyway, I got all worked up about it. I was excited that FWC and Palm Beach County, sort of reinforced what I was saying. And so that began phase one. And I just started talking to anybody in the area who has done restoration projects, who knows what they're talking about, just to really learn and really define the problem. At the same time, I was listening to my neighbors. Everybody was talking about the state of these mangroves. And I remember having a meeting with a bunch of people at the Tiki Hut behind Island House, where people were talking about what can we do, what can we do. We wrote letters to FWC to appeal for something to be done. And then up until this point, FWC thought they had a pool of money that they could use towards a project like this. And they were working with the folks at University of Miami who developed the Sea Hive. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a manufactured wave attenuation device that's like a cylindrical concrete device that breaks the waves. But in the early spring of 2023, FWC, my contact, called me and said, the money has now been allocated to a different project, so I'm really sorry, but we don't have the money. But honestly, you'd be better off if you went off on your own and did this, not through the government, because it'll take too long, but I'll help you. I'll be your mentor and I'll advise you and so forth. So we decided to start with a meeting of residents in March of 2023, and we had FWC and Palm Beach County actually present to the residents about why it's so important to try to save the mangroves and the seagrasses. And Tom, I know you were there at that meeting. Peter DeWitt was there from across the way, the Jupiter Lighthouse. And the takeaways for me were, A, a lot of people care about the ecosystem here. And we had a really good turnout from a lot of different buildings. B, they were interested in looking at all the options, not just Sea Hive, but let's look at all of the potential solutions and see what's best and most likely to succeed. And part of the reason we didn't want to pursue the Sea Hive is they wanted to do a tested control because it was a new technology. And that means you put them in front of one and you leave the other ones by themselves. And we weren't willing to see the ones that weren't protected die. So we decided to pursue other options. So I left that meeting thinking, okay, now we got to find some more expertise, more manpower, and some more money. And so I was very fortunate to be introduced to the Volo Foundation. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. They're down in Palm Beach Gardens. They have a relationship with the Ocean Conservancy, which is the oldest nonprofit in the United States devoted exclusively to ocean conservation. They introduced me to J.P. Brooker, who's the Florida director, and he immediately said, community-led efforts like this have to happen. And I will partner with you on this one because if this succeeds, this can be replicated in other areas of the Indian River Lagoon and or in the broader Florida waters. And so that was a game changer. And that's what I call kind of jumping to phase two. So with the extra manpower and expertise, we started by raising awareness. We published an opinion piece in the Palm Beach Post and the Invading Sea. The Invading Sea is it's an online repository of articles that all of the Florida newspapers can access. We developed media materials. We have someone working on a film to document sort of this community-led effort. We held a media day and had great coverage. I don't know if any of you saw us, but we were on all the major networks and most recently in Florida Weekly. So we really started to get some traction. At the same time, we continued to build the network and talk to people who were in the field. We went back to our neighbors to reconnect with them. And so I have a representative in each of the major buildings who live in that vicinity who agreed to forward on information to residents. And we sent out a survey. We got 63 responses. And what was most striking to me was, of the respondents, 87% said this type of project is extremely important or very important. The other striking result from the survey was we asked them if they'd be willing to help in a variety of different areas, from fundraising, to marketing, to donating money themselves, and so forth, and over 70% of the people said yes. So I knew we were onto something and that there was certainly an energy in the community to make something happen. So the next step was to really professionalize, I like to call it. So we incorporated in Florida as Jupiter Narrows Conservation Alliance. We received our 501c3 status. We've developed a website that I encourage you to go look at, jupiternarrowsconservation.org, and set up emails and so forth. And then we hired Taylor Engineering. They are the marine engineering firm that is working with the Jupiter Lighthouse on the restoration around that whole area. They're also the engineering firm that has done a lot of work in the Loxahatchee River. So we interviewed 3 different engineering firms. We selected Taylor because of their kind of intimate knowledge of this whole ecosystem. And so the first thing we had them do was conduct a submerged aquatic vegetation study, or a seagrass survey. That's required because you need to know what's there underneath the water, because you can't displace a lot of seagrass just to protect mangroves, and so we needed to know what was there. You can see on this map the area that they actually surveyed. So it's from south of the bridge, right at the Jib Club Marina, all the way up to just into Coral Cove Park, north of this northernmost island. What they found was 5 different types of seagrass and a really robust coverage. It wasn't as dense as we've seen in the past, or they've seen in the past, but there was a lot of coverage. They also saw a lot of anchor and propeller scarring in the seagrass. I know this is an area where a lot of boats park, and so there's a lot of seagrass that gets torn up when engines get stuck and anchors are dropped and so forth. And then the next thing we asked him to do, we said, okay, now that you know what's there in terms of submerged aquatic vegetation, tell us what's possible. Give us an idea of some of the concepts that could happen. And so they went out and put together some concepts and had some discussions with the DEP and the Army Corps. We call them kind of pre-application discussions to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Is this a non-starter? You know, should we keep going? What they heard was, yeah, keep going. And what they proposed was a limestone breakwater on the west side of, I call it 3 of the islands. So we actually surveyed 4 islands. The one that was south of the bridge by the Jib Club has actually done better, so we decided not to do anything there. But the other 3, we would do limestone breakwaters around them. We were really excited about this option because it has proven to be successful right in our neighborhood. This top picture is south of the lighthouse. I'm sure you've all been down there to their shoreline. But they've seen tremendous growth and recruitment of the mangroves behind these breakwaters. And then this lower picture is in the Loxahatchee River embayment area, central embayment area. And this is where in 3 years they've seen over 500% increase in seagrass just around the breakwaters. So very exciting to see the possibilities here. So that was phase 1 and phase 2. They cost us about $60,000. As I said before, the first phase of it was the Volo Foundation. They basically made a donation to the Ocean Conservancy to have them work with us on this. And then the second phase was another $35,000. The Ocean Conservancy paid for the seagrass survey, and we had a handful of private residents who kicked in money to pay for the concept designs, the website design, and so forth. We're now in phase 3, and this is where we've now gone back to Taylor Engineering and we said, help us get permits. And so that is where we are in the process right now. Taylor Engineering is having some pre-application discussions with DEP and the Army Corps. They're putting together engineered designs to try to get the permits developed. The reason I put this picture here is I feel like there's a tremendous advantage to being right across the street, or right across the water rather, from the Bureau of Land Management project, because we're using the same engineering firm. Taylor is going to the same permitters to talk about it. It's the same ecosystem. There's a lot of advantages to following their lead, if you will. Oh, let me go back to this picture. I want to point one thing out. So several people said, okay, so you put a breakwater here, you put another one here, you put another one down here. What about where we used to have a whole set of mangroves? Because we wanted to restore this to historic levels. Unfortunately, it's extremely hard to get something like a limestone stone breakwater permitted where you don't actually have something behind it that you're trying to protect. So it's almost like it's too late there. So then all the residents along here said, well, we'll put some skin in the game. Let's at least educate people about how important it is to be cautious in this area where it's such a fragile ecosystem. So every single condominium building on their own nickel bought signs, and in the case of Clyden, a banner, just to say caution, critical mangroves and seagrass restoration underway. And the idea being, actually the idea came from people we had talked to at the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. We set up a table there, and we had many boaters and paddleboarders come by, and they had no idea that we were looking at this. They recognized how important it is, because this is an area everybody loves. And once people understand how much the mangroves contribute to the clear water and all the wildlife in it, I mean, we all have a vested interest in trying to save this ecosystem. And so we put these signs up in the hopes that people would at least look, pay attention. We have our QR code on it so they can go to our website if they want to learn more. But it's a first step to try to educate the public about how important it is to be cautious here. And around this time we started, we're also looking at applying for some grants, and as part of that learned that it's really helpful to have endorsements from the local municipalities and organizations who are related or interested in what we're doing. So many of you may know we did get a letter of resolution from the council, the Village of Tequesta Council, stating that they support our efforts and what we're trying to do. We just got one last week from Palm Beach County Environmental Resources Management, and we're getting one from Peter DeWitt at the Jupiter Inlet Lighthouse, outstanding natural area. He's very interested in what we're doing because he recognizes that what he's doing on his side of the waterway is certainly going to impact the amount of traffic, the amount of people, the amount of recreation on our side of the waterway. And so if we don't start educating people and putting a project in place, we'll lose that part of the ecosystem. And then we started fundraising. And so in mid-June, we sent out our first appeal to the people in the local area and any people who had come to our website and put their names in. And I'm really happy to say we've raised $70,000 just since June, really in, 8 weeks. We've raised $85,000 so far in 2024. We're also reaching out to foundations in the area, and I'm excited to tell you that just 2 weeks ago, we formalized an agreement with the Andrew Red Harris Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but Andrew Harris lived in one of the condo buildings right adjacent to this ecosystem for 2 years before he tragically passed away, was hit by a boat in the inlet. And so his parents set up a foundation in his name to build, I guess Andrew was quite a water guy. I never had the opportunity to meet him, but so they basically do mostly offshore reefs to build up marine nurseries, ecosystems. And when they heard about our project, they were very excited because obviously this area is very near and dear to their hearts, with Andrew having lived right there. And they had several of their supporters saying, you know, have we thought about an inland reef? And so when they knew we were trying to sort of save this whole ecosystem, it seemed like a real perfect fit. So we have, they are going to be working with us and supporting our efforts. And then very recently, we're also reaching out to local businesses, NGOs, any local associations that are interested in what we're doing. So we'll get to that in a minute, because that's where I could potentially use your help. So that's phase 3. Phase 4, and we, the permits, as you may know, take an awfully long time to get. We're hoping to get them sort of end of first quarter, maybe second quarter of this next year. And at that point, need to be ready right away to jump right into construction, bidding process, and having final engineering drawings done. And then we hope to be in the water sometime in 2025 with this restoration. Big motivation for us to get in the water next year is to try to get in the water while the Federal Bureau of Land Management is working on their project across the way. We've talked to Peter about it. There might be some opportunities to find some economies if we're doing this at the same time in terms of mobilization or whatever. So that's why this estimate of the cost for the construction, the installation, is quite variable depending on what kind of economies we might achieve. This number also includes a 3-year monitoring program, which would be required, I'm sure, from either the Army Corps, probably the DEP. So we're planning a monitoring period for 3 years as well. So you might be asking, how can we help? And I would say inviting me to speak to you all is a huge help, first of all, because I think this truly is a community effort, and the more people in our community who know what we're doing and what approach we're taking, the better. So if you, I'd love it if you could spread the word, tell people about what we're doing, encourage them to get involved. And also, if you hear of ideas for funding opportunities or networking opportunities, whether it be local businesses, local foundations, occasionally there are grant opportunities where the grants have to be written or submitted from a municipality, so who knows, there might be an opportunity to work with each other on that. And we would be thrilled if you would be willing to write a letter of support for our efforts as well, because as I said, that can really be helpful in grant applications. So that's what I have for prepared remarks. Happy to answer any questions you all have.
Start here.
Sure. Susan, thank you. Your energy and passion is, I think I wrote down passionate community advocate. Like you really set the standard for someone who gets involved in, you know, something you're passionate about and driving it home. A couple of things, just thoughts here, and I'm really keying in on your last point about funding and networking. I've frequented that area quite a bit, and I see snorkelers and boaters, and you know, there's a lot of marine life in that area, and a lot of people who are enjoying it, including the boaters that anchor in those exact spots that you say, you know, showed issues, right, or scars, I guess is the term that you used. Have you thought about funding requests from boaters themselves? Like when you say get in the water on the construction, I'm thinking, like, is there an opportunity to get in the water with the people who enjoy it each and every day? And I'm sure there are going to be all types of folks that are going to respond differently to that. But even and just a follow-on thought on that too is, you know, our local schools, local high schools, local middle schools. I see some very young people there, diving, snorkeling, and operating sometimes very expensive boats. And it just seems like our next generation of people that we could educate about it, because I was unaware of most of the things that you just talked about today. So it really educated me.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the question. Yes to all of the above. So part of the project will involve some mangrove planting behind the breakwater to sort of supplement what we have left of what the islands that are there. So our plan would be to get the schools involved. We've talked to NANG already about it. We've talked to Wild Blue Seas, who are involved in some, you know, the mangrove planting. So definitely we want to engage the schools, not just for the planting, but for the education, because we really believe if the kids really learn about why this ecosystem is so important, they'll go home hopefully and tell their parents about it, and it just sort of, the word spreads. That's number one. In terms of boaters, I've got a call set up with the gentleman who runs the West Palm Beach Fishing Club, so that's the fishing community right there. The boaters, we've got some names of people at the Marine Industry Association. Our priority right now has been the immediate recreators, and I know that's boaters too. We've talked about going to some of the boat rental places. I know they encourage people to come down and park in that area, but, so our approach would be, that's fine, but maybe could you share some information about how they can be more responsible when they are coming down and parking there? We've got postcards available to people who rent the canoes at the Get Up and, or kayaks at the Get Up and Go Kayak, right down there by the bridge. So they're sharing our information. There's postcards at the lighthouse for people who go visit the lighthouse. So we're getting there. We have a long way to go, but again, if you have specific ideas, I'm all ears.
No, I appreciate it. I don't know that I have specific ones, that just trying to help, brainstorm a little bit on all the great work you've already done.
And I want to comment on the energy. Thank you for that comment, but I have to say, because it's like I started this with trepidation, because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. The more people who are excited about what we're doing and who really believe in it, that energizes me even more. And I just see this community growing, and I find that incredibly fun and motivating, and I couldn't think of anything better to work on during my retirement.
Hi, Susan, and thank you for this. I also didn't have any idea that this organization existed, and it's wonderful and to hear this information. One of the aspects that's been addressed before is the boating community. I am a boater. The whole safety issue with that speed through that particular channel has obviously been brought forth and did not pass. Is there another opportunity to readdress that in aspect to what your organization?
Sure, so I'm really glad you asked that, because I meant to mention that we are in regular contact with people who are taking different tacks towards the same end goal, one being the speed limit. We support those efforts. We do believe that the speed limit would help in terms of reducing the wave action as well as making it a safer environment.
Right.
It's not a cause that we're taking on as an organization. As an organization, we're really focused on the restoration. And that's intentional, because the speed limit issue has become so divisive and controversial. And we're taking an approach that everyone will benefit if we can save this ecosystem. Everyone.
So-
Boaters, fishermen. And so we're trying to include people in a positive way. So that's kind of how I know the new traffic study was just completed. In fact, it was just sent to FWC, I think last week someone sent it to me. And I have heard that FWC is looking at it again. I just don't know exactly what that means or what the timing is, but we couldn't afford to wait for that, and that alone wouldn't solve the problem.
Okay.
Because even when boats go, some of these big 4 and 5 engine boats that come through, I can assure you, living right there, even going slowly, they kick up a tidal wave. I mean, so, and the speed limit thing is a night and holiday, a weekend and holiday thing that they were proposing, and these mangroves need more help than just that.
Okay, that was my thought, is because I imagine that mangrove deterioration has a lot to do with that wave action, with the increased amount of boats over the past decade, and then of course the speed and power. It's dangerous as a small boater to go through there, but interesting. That's something to look at. So historic photos that showed existing mangroves, the DEP doesn't recognize to come back in as a restoration. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so when I talked to, I think it was my contact at Palm Beach County Environmental, they will occasionally do programs like that without, where they put the breakwater without something behind it, plant behind it, but it requires a very specific depth of water and whatever, and it sounds like it would not be an easy thing in our area. I think the easier thing there might be to look at seagrass restoration, and although I know seagrass is very hard to grow, but if you can save what you have and provide the environment that seagrass wants to grow in, it will recruit and multiply. So we don't want to give up on that, because obviously, if you look at the historic pictures, there was a lot more there than there is now. But right now, we're focused on, let's just triage and try to save what's there, and then figure out
I
phase
understand.
2.
Okay. And just a thought off the top of my head, I don't know even what this would look like, but different anchoring options. I know a mooring buoy isn't an option because it's so shallow there, but I don't know if there's other concepts out there for mooring to keep people from throwing their anchors in that sand.
Question. Yeah, we can look into that. I mean, you know, part of the problem that I witness is, you know, people go there and park at high tide, and then they're having a good time, and they kind of lose track of time, and the tide goes down, and then they're stuck.
Right.
They blast their engines to
Yeah.
try to get a captain slip. You know, you see the salad going up in the air.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well, thank you. I passed you my.
Sue, you know I support everything that you've been doing, and I was there Monday on a photo assignment, and I was stunned in regard to, you know, late morning on Monday with the majority of the parking spaces on Beach Road already taken. I mean, and then, of course, you had the oblivious boaters coming through with their wake, and there's no enforcement, or was no enforcement. It's just sad. But I support you, and in regard to our communications, what, if anything, can we use in regard to what you just showed us and/or on your website to help spread the word here in Tequesta?
I think I would certainly steer people to our website. We still have more to add to it in terms of what we haven't yet sort of made public what the solution looks like, what the breakwaters would look like, because we were waiting for the engineers to come up with not just a concept, but something that's more concrete that they're going to get permitted. We are just about there, so maybe putting something like that up with the plan and a link to our website, and just inviting people to get involved. I think that would be very helpful. Maybe we talk about that offline.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Sue, can I interrupt? Sue, this is Jay with staff. We can try and coordinate with our Lori McWilliams, our clerk, to put something on social media. So maybe Tom and I can reach out and do that, just to help educate people.
That would be great, thank you. Yeah, it's so popular. I mean, everyone loves that area. But as people have said, you know, you can love it to death, and that's what's happening.
I had no idea. Sue, Jill Wenta, thank you so much. That was a great presentation and brought a lot of light to myself. Having lived here since '99, I had no idea the amount of destruction that happened to the mangroves, and my background is landscape, so it's very sad to me to see that personally. Have you gone to like the Jib Club to spread the information, and the other marinas? Because, you know, all those are the people using the boats over there, maybe to educate them in a way?
Yeah, so we haven't been to the Jib Club specifically. We've
Yeah.
been to the Jib Club condominium.
Okay.
And the Jupiter Inlet Colony, we're going to be presenting to their commissioners in the fall. Yes, we should go there. I think the boat club, the marinas that we have kind of more in mind are the ones further north, where
Right.
people think are coming down and parking more from there. That's good information. I always assumed the Jib Club Marina was more big fishermen going there south out to the inlet.
Sure, but they're also, you know, yeah, I agree with you, but they're residents from here, and a lot of residents that care about our waterways, that I know of a few live on Jupiter Island, so maybe those would be somebody that could step forward. It just was something that came to mind, especially with one of those little islands is right there, right by the Jib Club.
Absolutely.
And then the marina that is north, where, I forget the name of it. It's right where that new boutique hotel was bought. Is it
Yeah.
Water Point, maybe?
Water Point Marina.
Marina, and there are a ton of boats in there. You know, Tiki 52, things like that. Everybody just cares so much. So I'm really glad that you're bringing light to that issue. And,
you know, it'll be repeated from me all over the place. Because, wow, I would love to see nothing more than that to be restored. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
you have you should have my email, I put it up
Yeah.
there, it's Sue
Oh.
at JupiterNarrowsConservation.org. What I would ask is, I love all your suggestions, if you have names of people, like, could
Okay.
make an introduction to me, I'd much rather talk to an individual than sort of send a blanket email or knock on a door, you know what I mean?
Sure.
If you know people, I would love an introduction.
Well, I can certainly ask around for names.
Thank
I
you.
don't personally, but I will definitely be asking around. You said Sue at JupiterNarrows.org?
No, JupiterNarrowsConservation.org.
Conservation, okay.
In
And re-
retrospect, that's
Yep.
way too long.
And to piggyback on Jill's point too, there's the boat club there, so you probably
Yeah.
have a lot of like inexperienced boaters that rent boats and are members of the boat club, and they don't know
Any of
they don't
that.
know this stuff.
No,
So
and they need
maybe
to be
maybe
educated.
having the boat club tell people not to go there
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Educate them,
Right.
yeah.
Not drop an anchor.
Yeah, I mean, even the general population, I just had a neighbor send me an email literally this morning saying, oh my gosh, over the weekend, there was a mother watching her 3 kids climb on the mangroves.
Oh.
And the person yelled out and said, do you know what those trees are? And she said, yeah, they're mangroves, kind of like, you know?
Right, right. Oh, Lord.
So we gotta get into schools and educate the kids and, you
Oh,
know,
that
just-
would be another good idea, bringing it to the schools.
Yeah, apparently Jupiter High School has a really active conservation group.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about in the fall, connecting with them and seeing if they would help us do
Yeah.
some kind of education program.
And what about at the elementary? I have some connections over at Limestone that, you know, you start them young, they're the ones that are gonna be telling their parents what not to do. You know, if you
Plus,
let them know.
There's at least 3 schools that go up to maybe as high as 8th grade in Tequesta proper.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, if
I-
there's names of people that you want to connect me with,
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
not
actually,
bashful.
I can do that. Sue, I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Connections to schools. I know, I'm good, thank you. You?
So one quick question. You had mentioned grants and the possibility of municipalities partnering with, you're a nonprofit, right?
Yes.
And submission of grants. Have you identified any?
I have, but right now, we're not ready for that yet, so we're very small, but my lean and mean organization. What we've been advised on the grant front is not to go after federal grants because the administrative burden is just onerous, even for big organizations. So I do have a list of grant opportunities right now. We're going for what we call the low-hanging fruit, which are the easier, the family foundations, where there's just less, paperwork and all that kind of stuff. But they're definitely on our list, and once I identify them, if they're ones we want to go after, I would, Brad, would you be the person to get in touch with?
Yes, please.
Okay. Great, thank you.
All right, anyone?
Can I piggyback on Brad's one?
Go
Because so this is Jay with staff. Was Florida Inland Navigation Grant, is that one of the ones you've looked at?
Yes.
So that's one I think we would have to be the partner on, and be the applicant, but our residents, I believe, pay fined assessments, but we've never actually gone after a fine grant. So it could be the perfect opportunity for us to go after one. So put that on your list when you're talking to Brad, please.
Yeah, let me research this. Someone did, I think it was my contact at Palm Beach County sent me that one. He said you should look into that. So let me look at that and we'll be in touch for sure.
Great. I think that's it. Sue, thank you so much. I appreciate you holding on for, about an hour before you got the opportunity.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you again for having me. And yeah, if you guys are willing to write a letter of support, that would help too. So if you can talk about that amongst yourselves.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sue.
You too. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we have 35 minutes left, and we have more than 35 minutes of stuff in the agenda, in my opinion. So let's,
Warp speed.
let's do this quick. So the consent agenda, does anyone have any changes or modifications to the past minutes? No.
I'm
Can
not-
I-
you want to make,
Go
for me to make a motion?
Please.
That's- Where are the minutes? I don't even see them on the
Under
agenda.
consent.
Consent agenda?
Oh, present, yeah, okay, I got you. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of June 12 and July 10 for the EAC.
Second?
A second.
All right, that passes.
Now you gotta vote.
Oh,
Somebody
sorry.
say all in favor signify by saying.
All in favor signify by saying yay.
Aye.
No, yay.
Yay.
Yay or nay? All right, let's go to old business. Well, hold on one second.
Do we need?
Can we, yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
can you make a motion to
Jump
move the Loxahatchee River District discussion that we referenced before the meeting up now?
Loxahatchee River?
That was, I think, gonna be a staff discussion, but you could, I don't think it's an actual agenda item on here, but you.
It is not.
You could,
Oh, so I remember talking to you before the meeting, thinking that, or asking, maybe it was Jay, is the only really time-sensitive item that we have is item number 12, which is the discussion on meeting times and dates?
that would be, and then I think we're trying to get a speaker from the Loxahatchee River District to the next meeting, so we wanted to get, he wants an idea of the type of questions you want to discuss.
Okay.
So those were the only two time-sensitive things, I think?
So I think if you want to make a motion to move that item up and add the Loxahatchee River District discussion.
I make a motion that we move up in our consideration of the agenda, item 12, which is a discussion on EAC meeting times and dates, and followed by a discussion of what we want the next month's, or is it next month? Speaker for, from the Loxahatchee River District to touch on when he or she gives that speech.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Okay, well, let's start with number 12 then. Go ahead, go ahead.
We're short on time, so I was just trying
Yeah.
to jump right in
I
and
have
go quick
to
here.
jump out for 1 second.
Okay.
Float away.
Okay, yeah.
But I know.
You know where we're going,
what you're
okay.
gonna say,
So yeah, just a quick update. So at the recent council meetings, the village council has pointed out that we only had one candidate for EAC. Fortunately, we got a great one, so that it all worked out. But they were curious if, you know, the meeting times, you know, are preventing people from wanting to join or from participating. As you see, we don't really have much citizen engagement here, even though those were extremely interesting topics we discussed today. So the council just wanted the EAC to discuss whether to keep the meeting schedule as is, to shift meetings to night meetings. I believe historically the village had them in the day because the clerk's office managed these meetings and they were a little reluctant to do night meetings. They already have a lot of other night meetings. Now Meg and I are kind of handling the meetings and we're able to stay at night. So that's in play. And then the other option they said was, you know, I think the EAC was founded, was it 4 years ago, Tom? 5 years ago, to kind of address very key and pressing environmental issues. And at that time, it was decided to meet monthly. So now council has wondered, you know, now that some of those things have been addressed, would it be more productive to meet, you know, every other month or quarterly? In which case, if we were having night meetings, I suppose we could, rather than having a 2.5-hour day meeting, we could have a bi-monthly 4-hour night meeting or a quarterly, you know, 4-hour night meeting and pack it all in. So just
4 hours.
or 2 hours,
Yeah.
whatever sounds good for you guys.
2 is good.
But yeah, so that was just council wanted feedback from the EAC before they, you know, took any action or even thought about it.
So you want us each to put a little input in?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I wouldn't suggest quarterly because it takes us so long to get things done.
Agreed.
So I would not recommend that. Every other month, possibly. 4 hours, no way. That's too small an attention span. Would it benefit other people to, or engage other people, not only to attend, but also to come in the evenings? Probably. Would it also engage other possible candidates to become a member if we change the time to a morning before the workday begins? Possibly. And yes, it would probably be evenings. And I'm open to any of them. I have flexibility for it, so I'm open.
I agree.
Is it possible, I too am flexible, it doesn't matter if it's morning, evening, but I do think quarterly is too far apart. But is it possible we could do a hybrid? I know it can get confusing, but say like every other month, we had a night meeting, which, and if the turnout was no different than what we have, we could say, okay, there's no need to have a night meeting, something like that. I'm just asking, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I'm just thinking, would that help us gauge if nighttime is the way to go, evening time is the way to go?
One thing I forgot to mention too, getting professionals to come in the evenings is probably more difficult, right? So it's been really easy for us to get these great speakers to come out. So if you have them in the evenings, it's difficult for them to come out. And of course, the meetings are recorded, right? So what happened today, everyone can go back and see that still, so,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Is this room available in the evening?
It can be available in the
Okay.
evenings, yeah.
Did everyone kind of give their opinion?
Well, you're the next year.
I think so, yeah.
And Joe?
I did. I don't know if Wade yet.
I haven't yet. I mean, I really don't have a strong opinion one way or
Yeah.
the other. I guess my question would be, who are the main constituents we're trying to serve? If it's our residents, then I think, we need to adapt around their schedule. If it's us, then we adapt around our schedule. If it's the speakers, then we adapt around theirs. But I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'll share a little bit of history. I think I told Jay this in an email. So Wednesdays was chosen because there was no conflict with any other meetings. And like Jay said, the village clerk's office took care of all of the administrative related matters, except that I had to always do the agenda and the backup and so forth. But I lost my train of thought. They did it during the day for two reasons. A, staff would be here. B, staff probably didn't want to work in the evening. And C, there would be no overtime costs that would end up being charged to the village for people working more than the 8 hours or 40 hours a week or however it's computed. That's basically all I remember about it from 5 years ago, is how we got to where we are today.
I like your thought, Tom, on the hybrid for now, to see if, maybe it's every other month, and then 1 month it's morning or afternoon, whatever works for everybody, and then the other month is in the evening, and see if it brings people in, because that would be great. But then the month that we're during the day, we could still have the presentations.
I like that idea.
I'm flexible, I don't know if you guys are. I can work my schedule to make it happen.
I feel like this particular committee is not something that will have a high attendance from our community. And as we engage the community, it's going to be through our communication pieces. And I think for this topic that we are serving, that's the best way to engage the community, is through education and communication. It's not going to be to have interaction in here. Occasionally, somebody will. I definitely don't want to lose the opportunity to have access to presenters, because we gain so much information from presenters. And again, our job would be to disseminate that and make sure it gets to our community.
Maybe one suggestion would be to have once a year, just one night meeting where you provide kind of an educational thing where you say, hey, you know, residents of Tequesta, come out and hear what the EAC's been working on, but also share your own input. So it could kind of be a two-way street.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good
So
one.
that's something you can
Or,
consider.
like, for example, today, we had a lot of interesting speakers. If we can forecast or set aside people who say, yeah, I'd be happy to come and speak. And then we schedule it for that one night a year thing, and we let the community know somehow through platforms. That might, I don't remember who was on the EAC at the time, but back maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we invited the Florida Friendly Landscaping people, and they could only do it in the evening. And that was when we had the most people from the community ever show up. It was, maybe it was half the room, but it wasn't, you know, standing room only, but they showed up.
And that was a topic of interest, and it was in the evening.
Yes.
So that circles back around to that idea.
Mhm.
I think too, there's an opportunity, like, I'm brand new, right, so I'm asking questions you guys probably already know the answers to, but like, do we have a stated mission statement? Do we have an expected outcome from our committee that we're trying to drive toward? And if we do, then I think you know, we just track against, okay, the meeting time or the constituents or whatever, right? Whatever challenge that we have in front of us, how does it support our mission? Or how does it support our outcome that we're all trying to drive at? And if we're real clear on that, then it seems like the rest of the stuff is gonna be easy decisions to make. Easier.
That's true.
Well, we do have a mission statement. It was stated in a resolution adopted by the council that created this committee.
Okay.
And basically, it had said two things. One is that we were required to review Tequesta's comprehensive plan and to opine on every environmental issue within the comprehensive plan, which we've already done. And the other thing, and I'm really, you know, paraphrasing, it says that we are to make recommendations in our advisory capacity on any and all things related to environmental issues within the village of Tequesta, or potentially in the village of Tequesta. So it's really those two things.
All right, I've already had this discussion with Jay when he first brought it to my attention. I'm totally against having less meetings. I think once a month is it, you know, still inadequate because of the sunshine laws and our inability to communicate outside of this room. So we got like 2 hours a month, basically, to interact, and I think that's so important, and it's the sunshine law, so we have to kind of hold on to that. But I would like to try it in the evening. I think that'd be kind of interesting. I fear if we have like set aside one meeting per year at night, that meeting will be stacked even more with presenters. You know what I mean? And which isn't a bad thing, especially if there are citizens that come, more citizens that come. But it kind of takes away from our regular business. It almost becomes like a open house
Yeah.
presentation type thing, which I'm totally for as well.
Yeah, I feel good about that.
I say we keep it as is. 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock, if we try it for a month or two and we have the same amount of people coming, then we just kind of discard the evenings and then just keep
make-
doing as we're doing.
Makes.
Should we go like once a quarter, we have an evening, and the rest remain the same, just to give it a shot?
Well, in my mind, it feels like evening meetings, if we want to do a trial basis, it needs to be like a special thing. Where you, like today, to me, qualified as being special. We had 3 good presenters about subjects that many people in the community could relate to or have thought about, or et cetera, you know?
Well, I mean, one thing we could do is, towards the end of the year, kind of put our heads together and say which of these speakers would we like to re-invite to come out, because a lot of them are just trying to reach an audience. So we know Jupiter Narrows is trying to get their message out. and I'm sure a few of the other ones are, so we could then just kind of pick three or four ones we think are the most relevant and important, and then invite them back.
I agree, yeah, I like that.
Here's another thought, keeping in this loop, does it have to be a EAC meeting that we offer an evening to the citizens of information and education and have these speakers? Does it have to be at a meeting?
I'll talk to the village manager, but I mean, I think you guys could sponsor a special once-a-year thing and still have your regularly scheduled meeting if that's what you wanted. So in North Palm Beach, their environmental committee there would occasionally hold a special speaker series on Saturdays, and they would invite someone like from the Florida Friendly Landscaping and invite people to come out, and then still have their, yeah. So you guys could do an evening special meeting, a Saturday morning special meeting, whatever you think is beneficial, and still hold your regularly scheduled meeting. But I'll confirm with the clerk's office and village manager.
I like the Saturday.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
I like the Saturday morning.
I find it funny though that you came to me and said, "Oh, we need to reduce the amount of meetings," and now we're at it.
I just wanted to pick your brain on it. I just want to see where your head was at.
Well, but is it a given that we're all okay with staying with a once-a-month meeting during working hours?
Yeah, I mean, I try and make them as often as I can. I've had to Zoom on a few.
Yeah.
I've missed a couple,
Well,
but,
personally, I'm fine with it.
yeah.
I don't think there's a draw from the citizens to attend this.
An afternoon.
If they're going to attend the meeting, it's going to be the council meeting.
Agreed.
This is behind the scenes working and that gets presented to council and, you know.
Brought out at a council meeting. I agree with that, Michelle.
All right, so the motion would be to keep it as is, and we can maybe discuss at a later date, maybe next month, the possibility of kind of a special presentation sponsored by the EAC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Motion
Agreed.
then? Motion.
Yeah, if you want, I'm trying to remember what you said.
Just,
I'll make the motion.
can the chair make the motion? Chair can make the motion.
No,
No.
unless it's in an unusual circumstance you can.
Okay.
But
Okay,
there's
I
not
make the
one.
motion that we keep the meetings as is and look into adding a special Saturday or evening meeting to accommodate our residents.
Perfect.
Change meeting to
And
event.
change those meetings to an event.
That one,
Yeah.
yeah.
The one
It wouldn't
special.
be at a regular
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah.
it would be a special event.
So repeat it for me.
Oh my gosh.
No, you just made the motion. Just second it. Come on.
Okay.
But I wanted it to be clear that it's not.
Come on, I can only say it once, Tom.
Oh, okay, I got the picture, I just didn't know.
Who's gonna
the-
second it?
I will
Somebody
second it.
Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Got it.
No
Okay.
nays. Okay.
All right, so
Back
the
to-
neest is not on here, but it's something that is time sensitive that I think we can discuss in 15 minutes.
Yeah, go for it.
So the Loxahatchee River District is coming next month to speak at council.
To you.
Oh, to me?
To the EAC.
Oh, I thought to council.
No, to
Okay,
EAC.
even better.
Okay.
And Jay wanted to get an idea of the types of questions. It's kind of difficult in that we don't have the information first, but what kind of questions we would have for the Loxahatchee River District?
Okay, and to define the Loxahatchee River District, because I always have to revisit this myself, it's a special taxing authority that their mission is for the quality of the Loxahatchee River waters and sewage.
That's part of it.
Okay,
Uh,
anything else in there?
Well, they, some of, their original charter was what we used to call a sanitary sewer taxing district. In other words,
Okay. That's the original.
before modern sewage treatment began in this region. Tequesta was really only one of the first, where Constitution Park is today on Dover Road, that was a sewage treatment plant. And obviously for these, you know, Inlet Colony, Tequesta, Jupiter's much smaller in the 80s and 70s, and the unincorporated areas of Martin, et cetera, it's inefficient to have all these separate sewer companies, municipal or otherwise. So the legislature created this district that goes basically up to Bridge Road in Martin County and all the way to Donald Ross Road on the south, and that's the regional sewer district. All sewage, sanitary sewage flows to them for treatment. The pumping stations are owned by them, and we all pay our quarterly bill to the Loxahatchee River District. But over the years, as they got their original charter underway, they morphed it. I don't know if they actually added it to their charter, but they morphed into how do we protect the river? Because it was in their name, you know, Loxahatchee River District, Environmental Control District was what it was. So they do, in my opinion, they're doing monitoring periodically. That their website, you can see where they have like, what they call it, hot points, where they've taken a reading that's too high on this, that, or the other phosphates or whatever, nitrogen. So that's now something that they also engage in, is to make sure that the river water quality is good. They may not actually do anything about it, but they want to let us know if it's improving, staying the same, or getting
Okay.
worse.
And would that be relative to, because it used to be so much was on septic, and that had an effect on the water quality?
Yeah, and that relates to a question I'm gonna suggest, but,
Okay.
well, no, originally it was just for efficiency, but then over time, as we morphed further and further into the 70s and the early 80s, it became fairly well known and documented that septic content did end up being in the nearby water bodies. And so that, once that science became given, that's when the Loxahatchee, they stepped up their game relative to mandatory conversion from septic to sanitary sewer systems.
Okay, so my first question, first is yours, about the lift stations, so let you do your thing. My question would be, for Loxahatchee River District, is what, the village is on now sewer, but it's my understanding that the west side of the Loxahatchee River is still on septic.
The west, over in unincorporated Palm Beach, you mean off
Yeah.
of, like
Loxahatchee
Loxahatchee
River
River Road?
Jupiter Farms too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jupiter
they're on
Farms.
septic too.
So, I would kinda like to know what the
Plan is.
is for,
Septic to sewer conversions.
Yeah,
You're
they-
gonna get a fight
they-
out in Jupiter Farms.
They go all
They
the
don't
way
wanna
up to
change
Bridge
anything.
Road in Hope Sound too, so, you know, what are they doing
Up in Martin County.
unincorporated Martin County? So, yeah, that was gonna be one of my questions was, you know, where are you with your septic to sewer program?
I know that up in Martin County, it's a huge change that they're just starting mandatory switchover from septic to the sewer for the properties that are anywhere close to the waterways. So that's been something that, I see on all the different blogs and talks, and it's been big discussions out there that you can find.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and, well, yeah, I mean, we had it
Yeah.
20 years ago and just finished paying off
Right.
the assessment. But up in Martin County, it's tough to make changes, but they're doing it. I don't know at what speed, what rate, but.
Well, Tequesta, so I had to be the point person during all that stuff in the, I don't remember if it was 80s or 90s anymore, but the battle in Tequesta was they didn't want it. We spent over $500,000 fighting them in court and we lost. And then they turned around and took their costs of defending what they wanted to do, and they added it to the assessments.
That doesn't seem legal.
They're arguing, well, that's what they did. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing, but they wanted to use what's called a low-pressure sewer system, where there is basically a tank that is implanted in someone's yard at the appropriate spot, and it has a grinder in it. In other words, it's actually, is a word, instead of being like a community system, it's an individual system that by low pressure connects to the distribution system that ends up at the treatment plant. So Tequesta people did not want that. They wanted traditional gravity and pump powered systems that move sewage on to the treatment plant. And the price differential is great. Okay, low pressure is much less expensive, maybe costs about 50% of what a standard system like we probably all have here in Tequesta. So one of my other questions is, in addition to your pump stations that have been identified as being susceptible to rising sea levels, which you can cause backup sewage, blah, 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 which we did discuss with the council, is if a person has a low pressure sewer system in their yard, in these areas that have already been transferred to sewer systems, or in the areas where they haven't done it yet, what happens when there's flooding and there's a low pressure sewer system?
Yeah.
There's a tank, you know, like a 60, maybe 100-gallon tank in the ground, and if it can't go anywhere, I assume it's gonna back up into the house. So that's like my second question about sanitary sewer is, what's the effect on flooding to a low pressure sewer system? I assume it's not good.
No, I'm just saying that's a great question. They're not gonna be expecting that one.
No. Yeah.
Leave it to
So,
Tom.
Yeah.
Michelle, did you hit all the ones you wanted?
I did, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, those
I'm
were
trying
the
to
two.
think what else I wanted to ask.
What about just general water quality in the
Yeah,
locks,
I
kind of like
wanna
we heard
know.
about today,
Yes,
what they're
yes,
doing?
yes.
Because that was fascinating.
And how they're managing, you know, the natural plant life, and how are they managing all that? And to where, what, I mean, like, Tom, you asked, up into Martin County, I mean, what area are they focusing on, and what's their future plans? Because it's such a, I just love the locks.
It seems unfair if they went through a period of time where they were making everybody, including Tequesta, do it. But if they're backsliding, you know, the one way of looking at it is that they hit certain people hard, and they're just like, you know, not politically or otherwise, not worrying about the others. I don't know, but that's bothersome. I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but.
But environmentally, if they came at us about it all being environment, then we'll bring it to the rest of them.
Yeah, go-
Environmentally,
yeah.
everybody needs to
Go
do it.
for it, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, I know this is negative, so maybe we don't wanna do this, but their executive director, Aubrey, whatever his name is, I forget, he never answered the greenhouse gas letters and emails that I wrote him, saying, you know, we're doing greenhouse gas analysis here at the EAC, and we're looking at greenhouse gas production in the community, and we're looking at the municipal, and I can't remember which one it is, but part of the analysis that was done was that they attributed the greenhouse gases generated by Loxahatchee River District to treat our sewage is part of that equation. And so if we want to reduce our greenhouse gases, the question is, what are you doing at the plant to be efficient in the consumption of energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that you could, and no answer. In fact, he asked me, he responded and asked me, what is this all about? Why? And that worried me. because it made me think, he didn't even know what greenhouse gases, he's a biologist, but they never answered. And I don't know if we want to bring that up.
Let's see how the day goes. While we got them in front of us.
Yeah, okay. That's
Yeah, we'll leave that off the list, but
Yeah.
keep it in mind.
I've never forgotten it, because I can't stand it if you write a government official and they never respond. It's like sticks in my head.
So was it mentioned about their sort of blind eye to the public utilities threat assessment report?
Yes, well, what are they doing about the pump stations,
Yeah,
lift
okay,
stations? So
alright.
we'll ask what their plans are, if they're looking at funding sources.
Do they even know about
Is it on their radar?
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you
man.
have that report, or can it be accessed?
Yeah, we can, I think it's actually a draft, and was it public consumption, the meeting you went to, Tom?
Public consumption?
So you went to like a workshop about this report, right?
Yes.
Had they circulated the report yet? Because I think it's still in just draft format.
I thought it was in draft form that they were announcing. That's how I learned about the
Yeah.
lift stations being at risk.
I don't think I'm not sure if it's available for the public yet. If it is, I'll email it.
Okay.
When my follow-up.
This might show a little bit of my ignorance, but is there connection to Lake Okeechobee? Because I love that being brought up, that, was it Michael?
Yes.
That, I mean, what happens up in Martin County with the release of the Okeechobee, and we've been so blessed that that doesn't happen here I mean, that would be my top priority, is to not allow that in our area. And I don't know if the Waxahachie River District has any pull on that, but that would be one of my questions.
Well, did I
I'm keeping that.
tell me if I misread that gentleman from South Florida Water Meadow. He made me believe
Not coming from there.
that it's not,
not coming
that
from
water's
there.
not
Yes.
coming from Lake.
That's what I
Yeah.
heard him say. I wanna
Yeah.
make sure, let's
I-
add that.
If I heard him correctly, so I was looking at a map to check it. The water is going through a canal, well, it goes north to the St. Lucie, and then it goes south. And then from the south, there's another canal that goes off towards that catchment thing they're creating. But I think he said that once it goes south, it gets diverted south, you can't also divert it off that south route to that east catchment area. So the south is that's, I believe, where they're putting some discharges go into Lake Worth Lagoon in the Boynton Beach area.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's where that water is going. If I heard him right, he's saying that they can't divert it like it's southeast. He said you can't divert it southeast and then have it go down another thing towards our area, towards
Right.
Loxahatchee
To the
Slough
north.
and Grassy Waters. But that's probably a good question to ask.
Yeah, I think I heard him say he couldn't divert it again north, but I don't know about straight across.
Yeah, I think he said, because I think it is technically north, like the way that it
Okay.
runs. You have to look at it on
It was
the
a,
map.
Okay.
Northeast.
Who's the Loxahatchee River District accountable to?
Oh, that's a good question.
We get to vote on the, what do they call them, director?
They have a 5-member board of directors that's elected by the public, and then they oversee the staff there the same way like the council would oversee the staff here at the village.
Thank you.
Do we know if this fellow or girl or lady that's gonna make the presentation, have they got some things they wanted to share with us?
Not sure. Margie from our utilities director had reached out and just said that, that we want a presentation, and they said, what do you guys want to hear about? So they probably have some stuff to share, but I think they're more interested in just addressing your questions.
I don't know if you guys all know this, but the cost of sewer operations has gone through the roof across the country because of, inflation, energy costs, power costs, whatever. But Loxahatchee River, almost 40 years I've lived here, they are relatively efficient and they have a fairly reasonable quarterly sewer bill.
I agree.
Like, for example, in West Palm Beach, their sewer thing is probably 50% higher than what we pay. It's, So they do, that's a thing that they do a good job on, is keeping their cost under control, but does that mean they're not doing some of the state-of-the-art things to reduce pollution and greenhouse gases and so on and so forth?
Maybe that's how they keep it so low.
It could be, no, seriously.
No, I know. It costs money to
Who
be.
did you say was higher, Tom?
Pardon?
Who did you say was 50% higher?
West Palm, city of West Palm
City
Beach.
of West Palm,
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
it's 4:30. I know there's a hard stop in this room.
It can go a little longer
Okay, all right.
if you want to just wrap a few things up.
Yeah. So I would suggest then if something pops in your mind as a good question for them, just email it to Jay. And,
I think we've got a pretty good list. Yeah,
all right.
that's good.
All right, well.
So, go ahead. I was gonna ask a question, but go ahead.
I mean, to tackle some of, I don't think it's probably right to tackle some of this stuff when we have minutes left, when we're already at the hard stop.
I think you're right.
So what I would ask for is a motion to take all of our old business and new business that has not been discussed today and move it to the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to do just that.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion carries.
Quickly, any comments, questions?
No, thank you for having those presenters today.
Yeah,
It's
that was great.
It's overwhelming the amount of agencies and organizations that exist. There's just no way to just go in and find them. So seeking those out and then having them present to us was wonderful.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought they were really good. I enjoyed it. Before I adjourn, a future agenda item. So I went out and got these speakers. I'm thinking of, or trying to think of things environmentally that makes sense to discuss at our meetings. And there's a memo, a staff memo template that Jay sent me. I'm gonna email it to all of you or have Jay email it to all of you. And if something comes up or you think of something that you think would be important for all of us to discuss, they're pretty simple to fill out. A subject and just a quick little outline and maybe backup if it's something that requires a little more backup.
What's the little box on those that says piggyback, yes or no?
Oh, that's our agenda software system, so that's what we have on all of our agenda items at every
Okay.
meeting.
Piggyback.
Brad's is more of just it's a Word document,
Oh,
and
okay,
you
it's
write
not
it as a
that.
separate memo. It's not
Okay.
that type of memo.
Okay, just was wondering.
In government, do you know what piggybacking means?
Yeah, if you want to get something passed, you pick on another
You
one.
piggyback on a contract because that contract's terms and conditions is better than what you can
Yes.
individually do.
Let me make a note.
So that's why I wanted to tell you that in future agenda items, because I hope to get future agenda items from all of you.
Okay.
That would be great.
So you'll send us that format?
Yeah, either myself or Jay.
Jay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed. What was that?
That template, the
Oh, yeah,
staff memo.
I will send that out.
Any other things? All right,
You're doing a great job.
oh, thank you.
He just came on.
He's
as
keeping us on our
chair.
toes.
This is
I would like to call this meeting adjourned.
So moved.
Do,
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
We're out of here. Thank
I'm just
you.
gonna
did too good of a
share
job,
with you,
Brad.
Yeah.
the-
I tried to stay at 4:30, but you gave me a little leeway.
Yeah,
So,
it's gone now, but you
probably
received
just
an
do Jill
email with
Wenta at
today's
gmail.com.
agenda.